What's up, Dragon Brood? We have more foundations to talk about because the set is gigantic and it's just going to go on forever. And this is what we're going to be talking about probably how at this point for 4 months, it feels like. But you probably noticed there's somebody else on screen here for the first time on our channel. We get to invite in Mythic Mike. So, Mike, why don't you
Let's
tell everybody what
go.
you do and what your channel's about and how they can find you?
Awesome. I play best of one standard. We're making unique decks, all original decks. Often I have a budget focus, but not always. Ashnod's Harvester and Corpses of the Lost are my favorite cards, and we be brewing.
Cool. Well, we know everybody likes cool brews, so y'all go check them out if you haven't. Now, we're going to just change things up. We're not going to try to overhype things or whatever here. We're just going to have some fun and we're going to talk about our favorite cards out of this set. So, we're going to pick one from each color and we're going to talk about our favorite reprints. But when you're done here, you're going to want to go over to Mike's channel because then you're going to get to see us talk about our favorite new cards. So, yeah, this should be a lot of fun because I think we're going to have a cool spread of cards to talk about here. So, with you being the guest, Mike, why don't you tell us what your favorite white reprint is from the set?
Absolutely. My favorite white reprint is Charming Prince. Just pulling up the details. My God, Charming Prince. It was always a fun card if you guys remember. This is a 2-mana 2/2. When it enters, you either scry 1, gain 3 life, or bounce a creature that you own at the beginning of your next end step. And the reason why I think it's going to be great now is ETBs have gotten wild since its last showing in Standard. And I don't even think it was in play when Flesh Gorger was in play, right?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, so Flesh Gorger, right, 3 mana, and then you just play this, and then all of a sudden your Flesh Gorger is a 9/9. Not to mention just, I mean, there's so many great ETBs. I'm going to put it with Eidetic Memory and do all the, creatures that balance the creatures that draw cards. There's going to be so many fun things we're doing here.
Some fun stuff you can do. We can manifest some things and then, blink something out and get a big thing for cheap, right? That's a thing we could do.
We be scamming.
Yeah, there's some ideas here. I think this is a really cool reprint. And I think for people who didn't get to play with this card, it was actually a major player in Standard. It showed up in a couple of different decks. Like, it's going to be cheap and affordable if you want to pick it up in paper to play with it. So that's really cool. So, yeah, lots of good stuff going on with this card. I think this is a really, really good call out for a reprint, honestly.
Awesome.
Oh, and also, while I have a chance, why don't I remind everybody that's watching, if you want to buy any of these in paper, because there's going to be a ton of stuff to buy in Foundations and you want to save some money, check out Tales of Adventure. It's toamagic.com. You can use code DRAGON. They'll save you 5% on anything on the website. So go do it. Save some money. All right. My white reprint that I like is Fadar Retreat. And this is one of those cards that I think every time it's around, everybody finds something to do with it, right? Because you can either just pump your team with the +1/+1, which is nice when you hit landfall, or when you have landfall hit, you can just make a cat. The thing this time, though, that I think makes it a little bit better is really two different things. One, Foundation's given us a ton of cats. So there will probably be some legit cat deck that people can play. Because, if we're playing rabbits and birds and all this other stuff, why aren't we going to play cats, right? But the other level of that is we have stuff now like Caretaker's Talent that you can just play a land, make a 2/2, draw a card, right? And maybe because of Caretaker's Talent, you might be making a 4/4, right? Like, this is actually just really good right now. It's good for aggro decks. It's good for control decks. It's good for combo stuff. Like, 4 mana is not hard to come by on an enchantment. If there's a downside, it's really that it's an enchantment, and a lot of people are targeting enchantments. But otherwise, this one's really cool. I don't know how you feel about it, but this is definitely an exciting card to play with.
No, absolutely. Honestly, was it in Standard in Arena? I believe so. I believe I lost to it over and over again. It was more in a control shell, I feel like, back then. But man, I never got into the card playing it personally. But now that there's a cat theme, like you said, I may need to, because now we can do kind of a creature cat focus. Plus, there's so many good landfall triggers these days, right? That didn't exist necessarily back then. And this card's going to be a menace.
Also, if you have a deck that cares about +1/+1 counters, right? This is an easy way to get counters on stuff every turn. So, yeah, lots of fun stuff you can do with this. I'm probably going to have this in too many decks, if I'm being honest. Like, probably going to show up in two, even where it probably doesn't need to be. I'm be like, I got one slot left. Why not? I think that's going to happen quite a lot.
Yeah,
But
you're
all
gonna
right.
make me cry. You're gonna make me cry in the ladder. I could already
What do
tell.
you have for your blue reprint?
My blue reprint is Brine, Bourne, Cutthroat.
Ooh, okay.
My God, I love this card. This is a 2 mana Merfolk Pirate. It is uncommon. I forget if it was always uncommon, but 2/1 flash. And whenever you cast a spell during opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So you can play some Simic Flash. But also, what is crazy, and you'll see with some of my other colors in this in the other video, I've always said I love Corpses of the Lost. And Corpses of the Lost is a black card that makes skeleton pirates. They're pirates too. So I always have my eye on pirate cards. There's so many good pirates, but I'm thinking of a black blue pirates deck. We're putting this in. We're putting some removal, balance card draw, and you'll be shocked at how many counters this thing gets out of nowhere and just kind of takes over a game.
Yeah, this actually was another card that was played pretty heavily in standard once upon a time. And it seems pretty unassuming, but it's actually really strong. And I like the fact that it can fit a couple of different decks, like you're saying. Like maybe it's a pirate deck, maybe it's a merfolk deck, maybe you're just playing it in a flash deck, right? We're seeing some of that already with some of the different Demir aggro decks. So yeah, this fits a few different things. And again, this one should be easy to get your hands on. And it's an uncommon. So we all have uncommon wild cards just sitting around if you want to put those in on Arena. So yeah, this is a good one. I think this is another one that could see some play. Now, I'm gonna talk about one that I don't. Here's the thing. This is a tough one for me because some people are probably going like, "Why is this gonna get played? We already have Haughty Jin." You're not gonna replace the Haughty Jin. You're gonna play these side by side. You're obviously gonna be playing mono blue in a lot of cases already anyway. And this goes well with the other cards that also want extra spells in the graveyard. Eluge that already wants you to have a bunch of islands, right? This is probably a deck that's just like right on the cusp that kind of needed one more card like this. So now you're not just really so heavily reliant on something like the Haughty Jin, right? You get Tempest Jin as well. So now you get a little bit of redundancy there. And almost every time you play this, it's going to be a 3/4 or 4/4, and it just gets bigger with basic lands. Like this card also has a competitive pedigree, right? We've seen it do well in major tournaments before, possibly could again because the environment now looks like it has all the other pieces to make it work again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, everyone is trying to play against graveyard decks, right? With the eye or with the other blue cards that care about instants or sorceries.
True.
And this one just doesn't. So you can still have a crazy power level, but you won't have that bad feeling when someone plays all the cards that exile graveyards. There's a new card that we're going to get into that whenever an instant or sorcery is played, it just automatically is exiled. And yeah, your pick gets around that while still blasting out some mono blue power.
Yeah, it's a weird bit of both like redundancy but some backup options just in case, the game's not going the way you want. So, this would be one that again, I'm not a fan personally. I probably won't play that deck a lot, but I accept that I will probably lose to this card somewhere along the way. That's just kind of how it goes. But all right, let's get into some fun cards hopefully in the black card. So what do you have there?
Oh man, I got a fun one. Midnight Reaper, 3 mana zombie knight. Whenever a non token creature you control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. And it's a 3/2. The reason why this is so good is if they just instantly kill Midnight Reaper, you still draw a card. So it's better than a lot of versions of this. You do have to watch out. They don't wipe you and you lose 4 life and lose the game. But when you combine it with things like Sheldred or other things that benefit from drawing cards, I mean, you can to some extent cancel out the life loss. I am a little sad. I'm going to bring up corpses every single card, but that it doesn't trigger off. It doesn't trigger off tokens, and I love mono black with a lot of tokens. But I think we're going to have to just make a straight up mono black deck, Rakdos aggro with some real non token creatures, and then just keep it going with some Midnight Reaper card draw.
To that point, maybe this is something you can play in like your Rakdos sacrifice decks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you're already getting rid of like percussionist, the pirate that like when it dies you scry and get a treasure. right? Those type of things. And then you're getting an additional card for your trouble, right? That could be pretty good. Because then you don't care if your creatures die, because now you're getting double value off of them. And you're just drawing into more stuff they're going to be able to sacrifice and get more power off of. Like this card is another one that got played quite a bit in standard when it was around the first time for good reason. I mean, even in combat, you're like, all right, well, dude died. I guess I'll just draw a card, whatever. You know, right? So this card's actually pretty sweet. And, 2 toughness. Sure, it's going to die to pretty much all the removal everybody's playing. Like, it's a 3 mana thing that dies to cut down. Like, yeah, we know. But the upside still makes it worth playing, because worst case scenario, unless it dies to whatever, the red 2 damage one that exiles it, like, you're probably still going to get a card, right? So that makes it worth playing for sure.
Although, as you said that, the red 2 damage one that exiles, or the white 3 damage one that exiles, or Sunfall that
Oh,
exiles.
Sunfall, we don't worry about that. That's turn
Yeah,
5.
yeah. So,
We'll
I
be
mean, look,
fine.
I'm not sure it's going to be as good as the last time because of the exile. Although in best of 1, I wonder if we are going to see a little less exile removal now that red Leyline's gone, because I think you just had to play like 6 1-drop exile spells to beat red Leyline in best of 1 consistently. And now that that's out, at least in best of 1, I feel like you can play a little more hard removal. I'm putting a lot of Gopher Throats back in that
Yeah.
used to lose games against red Leyline because they would just make a million 2/2s, and you couldn't just kill their creature. It would not work out. And if best of 1 meta does go back to people playing a lot of hard removal to kill the demons, to kill these things, then I think Midnight Reaper could shine.
I think that's a good call out too, because I think one of the things we're going to see with foundations a lot is cards are going to kind of fluctuate in how good or bad they are, just as the metagame changes, as new sets come and go. Like, because right now we're all focused on artifacts or on enchantments, but we do know that Aether Drift has a bunch of vehicles and whatever. So there is a reality that maybe we shift to worrying about artifacts, and now some of these enchantments get a little more powerful, or vice versa, right?
Mhm.
So that's going to happen a lot. So even stuff we don't like today or don't highly rate today could be, standard staples a year from now or 2 years from now. So it's going to be crazy to have a set that rides this long.
Or 4.5 years from now.
Well, yeah, exactly. It may take that long for some of them. Who knows? Now, since you called out Midnight Reaper, I think you're going to enjoy my pick. You're going to be about this. But Death Baron. Death Baron's a colorless black for 2/2 zombie wizards. Skeletons you control and other zombies you control get +1/+1 and have death touch. Everybody's already playing a lot of skeletons, so this is another way to boost up skeletons. But this also pumps zombies, which is actually a pretty big deal. And we got a lot of zombie reprint stuff in this set. There's only a couple of skeletons, but we have a good amount of quality skeletons already. So this is just another bit of boost, and giving everything death touch makes those small creatures super annoying now. And like, this card's always been sought after. Anytime you see people playing it in Commander, like or zombies, there's always one of these in the deck. Like, this card, it's gonna be pretty annoying, especially you're talking about now having multiple ways to have 3, 4, 5 power skeletons. Like, this is gonna get kind of annoying.
No, absolutely. And the only thing that I'm just so sad about is that it's a zombie, because all the zombies just rotated and it will not get haste off corpses. So I've been brewing a bunch of skeleton decks, including a skeleton pirate deck, because, as I said, but I've had trouble fitting it in my skeleton deck so far because of things like Heraldic Banner and other
Sure.
things that could go in that aren't going to instantly be killed, like this potentially could, 3 mana 2/2. But if there's a zombie skelly deck, it goes in, and I think it still probably can go in a skeleton version of the deck. But I am, as a skeleton lover, I was so happy when this came out. And then as I started, I play test on Moxfield, where you,
Yeah.
on the bottom, like, I was doing it and I had 4 of these in, and every time I drew it, I was like, I'm not sure I wanted to draw that right now. So we'll see if I feel that way when I'm playing. But, I haven't decided on it yet, I guess.
Yeah, shout out to Moxfield, by the way. Like, we host our deck list over there, but you can do practice draws and other things. They have a lot of cool features figured into those once you have your decks in there. But yeah, I think this is a sweet card. And I also wonder, when I'm looking at Foundations, when I see a card like this, is it in the set just to be supplemental to some of the other themes that already exist when we're talking about zombies or skeletons? Or is it one of those signposts that says, like, well, there might be some more skeletons and zombies in the next like 2 years or so that we don't know about yet, right? And this is that part where we talk about stuff maybe being better or worse as time goes on, that there may be some cards you might forget about that, let's say we get to 2026 and the spring set has something to do with zombies or whatever. It's like, wait, remember Death Baron? Yeah, right. We need to go back and get this card. So yeah, this is what makes these types of videos fun, because while we have a favorite today, could totally change, even just months from now, if not years. All right. I have a fun one. I don't know what you have for red, but I'm going to let you go, but mine's going to be a throwback for real.
Awesome. Flame, I don't remember playing this card, to be honest with you. Flame Wake Phoenix, 3 mana, flying haste Phoenix, 2/2. This creature attacks each combat if able. And at the beginning of combat in your turn, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may pay 1. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So realistically, you mill this thing, you get some big creatures out, maybe some big mill creatures out, because that's pretty easy in colors like black. And think Souls of the Lost. And then you just pay 1 red to bring this back with haste each time. And I think it's going to be a super fun build around. I know there's the other Phoenix that cares about dealing combat damage to the opponent's face, and then it does the same thing. Look, I'm not a super spell guy. I'm more of a creature guy. So this one piqued my interest. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think the only thing holding this card back right now is just the way the red decks or the red base decks play right now. They're so tight, right? I don't know if they have space for this card currently, but it is the type of card that I kind of want to earmark and go, okay, well, maybe the format changes when we get to rotation in the fall next year and we go, you know what? Maybe this is the time. Or maybe we're playing more mid-rangey Gruul type stuff that has the big 4 power creatures. And like, I need another hasty thing. Let me go ahead and put a couple of Phoenixes in here. Or the format includes a bunch of mill decks, right? Like, you're like, okay, well, maybe this is a thing I can get out of the graveyard. So, like, these are types of, like, tricky cards that on their face, you go, yeah, probably not going to play this. But then you start going, maybe, right? Like, the meta game's change enough. Let me squeeze 1 or 2 in and see what happens. So, yeah.
I can tell you, I'll be playing it. Will I be winning? Probably. The way we're going to do it is we're going to mill it in a Rakdos deck. I'm never playing this out my hand.
Oh, sure. That's not the goal. Right?
Although I've been wrong before. So we'll have to see on this one.
Hey, that's the nature of making videos, just trying new cards. Like, I tell people, we try the crap so you don't have to, right? That's the thing. We put ourselves through the pain and the misery so you can just see how cards work. We're here for your entertainment. And research in some cases. But all right, my red one, this is a card I have not cast in, honestly, it might be 20 years since I've cast this card. But Ball Lightning. It's just red, elemental with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the end of turn, but it's a 6/1. Now, there was a point in time where it got reprinted, I believe, once before, and it was standard legal. And we kind of went, nobody's going to play with this, right? And hardly anyone. A few people played with it, but not a ton. But this time, I'm starting to think, like, unless there's a lot of first strikers in the format, because if there's first strikers, then this does nothing, right? It just gets first strike with his 1 toughness, whatever. But if there's not, like, this is still a big 6 point of damage for just 3 mana. And you have, like, it runs into most creatures people are going to play. We're not playing many things that have more than 6 toughness these days. So it battles everything. More importantly, it tramples over a lot of the smaller creatures, which is a big deal. And it's a great top deck, right? If you got your opponent low on life and then they sunfall and you're like, oh, here's a Ball Lightning, take 6, right? If you're not dead, you're close to it. So yeah, I could see a world where this, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, current mono red decks already being able to be pretty fast. Like, if they have 2 or 3 of these as their like top end to just try to finish you off, that's going to be really hard to deal with. So yeah, cool card. Not looking forward to being on the receiving end of it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, I mean, super fun card. And obviously, my first thought is fling it with Sellsword, right? That's always been my first thought. I was a flinger back before they had good fling cards. But now that they do, I wonder if they're going to choose that option over just a bunch of buff spells and, slick shot. But I mean, everyone is playing target removal, especially in best of one now, and you can blow people out now that red ley line's gone, especially. So, I mean, to your point, just having a big 6/1 that can get through, and you could potentially fling it after if, or even before, if the opponent doesn't kill it. It will be, a 1-for-1 trade then, even if they
Oh,
use
sure.
removal on it. Versus if you play your slick shot, play 3 combat spells, and they blow it out, you're done. I mean, this is just one card. They kill it, fine, and they don't kill it, it's getting some damage through at the very least.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's a little bit of risk reward because it's got to get in and do what it does. If it doesn't, that's just an awful use of 3 mana. But if it does, you're probably killing a creature and dealing 2 or 3 damage because of the trample, or they're just taking 6. And that's fine too if you're playing an aggressive deck. Hell, it doesn't even have to be mono red, really. We have enough multi lands that you could probably squeeze a couple of these into some other aggro builds too. So it's a card like I don't expect to see a ton of, but I have no doubt I'm gonna get surprised by it and lose to it and be like, I'm at 10, I'm fine. And you're like, oh, they played a ball lightning and that has trample. Well, I guess I'm still dead.
And death triggers. There's a bunch of cards with death triggers,
Oh,
right?
true,
About
true.
another creature loses, when another creature dies, you do X, right? And this could enable some interesting deck I've never thought of yet.
Yeah, it could be good for exactly those type of decks. Honestly, that's a good shout out. All right, that brings us to green. So, what do you have for your reprint green card that you like out of Foundations?
I've got Wild Born Preserver. I played this card a lot in the past. 2 mana Elf Archer with Flash and Reach. My God, I'm going to kill so many bats. I'm going to kill so many bats. You have no idea. Little 1/1 trying to steal my card. And then whenever another non-human creature you control enters, you may pay X. When you do, put X +1/+1 counters on this creature. So then, you're playing a little small deck without any top end trying to win early, but you get this down. Now your 1/1s have huge upside because you can buff this creature to the sky. And that is always just so nice to have a mana sink later in the game on a decent creature already. I mean, a 2/2 flash reach is going to mess up some stuff. I love it.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing because the last time it existed, because I believe this was like Wilds of Eldraine, or maybe the original Eldraine when it came out.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was the original Eldraine. I don't know why I said Wilds of Eldraine, but the issue is that I don't think it had like a real good like mana producer at the same time. Whereas this time we're gonna have Elvish Archdruid available, and this also happens to be an elf. So you could get into a world where this thing could be like a 6/6 or more the turn after you play it, right? And you're swinging in big. And like you said, having flash, having reach, that's going to be a good tricky card. Let you pick off some things your opponent may not expect. Or if you're just wanting to have something to give yourself a little bit of what I call like sweeper protection, all right, cool. You just don't cast anything. Wait till your opponent takes their turn. If they wipe the board, flash that guy in. Next turn, play something else, spend 2 extra mana. Now you're attacking with like a 4/4. So, like, could be quality, honestly. Like, it takes a little work and it doesn't fit every green deck or every green aggro deck. But if you have the right creatures to go with it, this really could do something. I'm good with this.
I mean, this with Brine, Bourne, Cutthroat, and we're already partway to a deck, right? Flashing in the pirate, and then
Yeah.
the pirate cares about other things being flashed in, and then you play the 1/1 flash pirate, and then that comes in flash and buff. Is it a human actually? I don't think so.
It's a no, this is actually an elf archer.
No, I mean the 1/1 pirate that flashes in.
Oh, the 1/1 pirate that flashes in. I don't know. I'd have to look that
I
up.
have to look at. You
Yeah.
get the point though. The point is, there's a lot of little flashy things these days. You can hold up counter magic. You can hold up card draw, and then play your stuff. And my flash decks. If you remember, what was the time where they had a 3/3 wolf that you flashed in and it made 3/3s?
Oh gosh, yeah, that thing.
My point is,
Yeah.
this was, I think, around the same time, and I
Yeah.
mean, Flash can get out of control.
We have a lot of wild cards right now. We're going to get to do some fun stuff. Now, I will say one card that got reprinted that kind of surprised me was Vivien Reed. I thought that when we saw the Planeswalkers were saying, I thought it was going to be okay, we're going to get reprinted Garrick, and that's cool. But Vivien being in the set was kind of neat. So this is 3 colorless green green for a Planeswalker with 5 loyalties. So that's already really good. For +1, you can look at the top 4 cards of your library and reveal a creature or a land from among them, put them into your hand, put the rest on the bottom. You can -3, which is the big one, to be able to destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. Now that we've entered a world where demons are already everywhere and a bunch of those fly, we know there's already going to be angels because we loaded foundations with another like 5 or 6 playable angels, I feels like. So this is going to have a lot of flexibility there. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, there's already tons of enchantments. And then -8, you get an emblem that creatures you control get +2/+2, have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. So if you get to that, that's already huge. Now, I can tell you historically from playing with Vivien, you don't often get to the 8 to be able to -8. If you do, you're rarely going to lose from that situation because it's just hard to deal with all your creatures. But being able to just search for lands or creatures every turn is super nice, and having the flexibility to just get rid of enchantments and occasionally the flying creature is also really good. There's so many times you're going to top deck this card, and it's going to do so many things you want it to do.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that talent that makes things come in with double loyalty, right? It'll 10 loyalty ultimate right away. There's the new doubling season, I think, that will do the same thing. Now we're talking a little bit in make believe Disneyland
Sure, Magic
world
Christmas
there.
Land, as we call
Exactly.
it.
But it, I've lost to the talent doubling, right? The other planeswalker. And if man, I mean, I'm imagining I'm going to lose to this. And like you said, the -3, I mean, my God, has that ever been stronger right now with artifacts and enchantments kind of taking over? And Llanowar Elf back, you put this on turn 4, maybe turn 3. It could really take over a game.
Yeah, I think one of the big things too with foundations that makes this card really good for especially like say the mono green type decks. Between this and the I believe it's the Reclaimer, the other elf that comes into play, destroys artifacts and enchantments. You no longer have to waste cards to deal with artifacts and enchantments. You can have cards just do what your deck already wants to do, but come attached with these other abilities. And I think that's actually really sweet too. So while there's some fun like throwback stuff in Foundations, there's a lot of things that really can change the makeup of current decks right now. So it's going to be hard to pick what we're going to be seeing a lot of right out of the gates with this set because man, you can do almost anything now, it feels like. Let's get into we kind of just made one category for multicolor and artifacts because I think there could have just been an infinite amount if we could have kept breaking stuff down. So what did you pick? Is it a multicolor or is it an artifact and what is it?
It's a multicolored and barely. It is Dryad Militant. It is technically multicolored because you can play either a green or
Yeah.
a white to cast it, which is pretty awesome, right? That's always awesome. A one drop that you can fit in 2 different colored mono decks, or whether you're splashing green or white. And my God, this was necessary. It's a Dryad Soldier. There is potentially a Soldier deck. Uncommon little budget banger right there. And it's a 2/1. So 1 mana 2/1s are always fine if they have something going for them. And what this has going for them is shutting down entire archetypes, because it says if an instant or sorcery will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile instead. So the Helping Hand, eye deck, goodbye. Mono blue, with what we just discussed. Goodbye. Any of these. There's new threshold cards that care about number of cards in your graveyard, right? This won't affect like self-milled permanents or creatures, but it will affect so many cards. Collect evidence if anyone ever does that. It'll affect that. And I'm just, I've been playing the 4 mana black Leyline in some decks just to mess up graveyards, especially the Eye Reanimate Helping Hand. And
Yeah.
I know, and look, it never worked that well, so I ended up taking it out, but in best of 1 at least. But this is one you can just put in your best of 1 decks, feel great about it, and it'll shut off like a fourth of the decks just entirely.
Well, I think it does a couple of things, right? Where you're talking about delirium, it needs to have oftentimes instants or
Mhm.
sorceries counted for those numbers.
Yep.
Those go away now, right? If you're playing against the reanimator decks, especially the white black ones or whatever, one of the best cards is what, Ride of the Moth. So it's
Yep.
like that goes away now, right? They don't even get a chance to cast it. So this really does, hamper a couple of different types of decks. Haughty Jin doesn't have all those spells in the graveyard, right? That you have to worry about. It's like, this is actually pretty cool. It's a neat
Black
reprint to have.
discard. Black discard has the 1 mana exile a spell and you play it back for 5
Yeah.
from your graveyard and they exile another card from the hand and draw a card. Nope. They're not replaying it, which is one of the good things about that deck. I mean, this thing just kind of smashes some people.
It's
Hilarious.
good incidental frustration for some decks, right? Like you can just play it as a quality 2/1. It goes into green decks or white decks. And like you point out, there's enough soldiers that soldiers could still be a thing, so that's possible. So it gets extra bonuses. And it just does it by sitting there. You don't have to attack with it. You don't have to spend any mana. It's just a thing that happens. So yeah, really good one. And I think that's a card that people might have overlooked, honestly. So that's a good one. I just realized I think all the stuff I called out was either rare or mythic so far in this video. But not this one. This one is also a multicolor card, and it's Boros Charm. A red and a white, choose one. It's an instant. You can either deal 4 damage to a player or a planeswalker, permanents you control gain indestructible, or target creature gains double strike. For those of y'all that have never played with this card, it's always good. Like, there's not a point in the game where you draw this and you're like, I hate that I drew Boros Charm. Like, it's always going to do something, right? It's either going to protect creatures from dying. It's going to oftentimes deal finishing damage to the opponent for 4. Or you can take out a planeswalker, right? Or if something gets through in combat and you're like, all right, cool. Well, instead of taking 3, you take 6. Right? This card's great. To the point that I'm almost a little concerned that it got reprinted because, man, this is a tough card to play around. It's good enough that it sees play in like modern and some of these older formats fairly regularly. So yeah, this card's a serious piece of business that I think if you're newer and you read it, it may not seem like a lot. Trust me, when you play against it and lose to it, you're gonna understand.
Honestly, like in my mind, this is the card I'm going to lose to the most and probably play the most if I'm ever playing. I feel like it's going to see so much play. I feel like it's just so good and traditionally has been good. But I mean, think of the cards we've been playing. If you like to do double strike strategies, we've been playing like a pay 2 mana for double strike attached to like a 5 mana 4/4 or something.
Yeah.
In the adventure creature, there's the other one where you could also pay 2 to like double an instant or sorcery, which is not good. So we've been playing 2 mana. Target creature gains double strike attached to pretty much a non-card. And that is played in certain decks. And then not to mention 2 mana deal 4 damage to a player. They didn't even have to throw Planeswalker on there realistically. That's a rate you don't get. I mean, compared to the 3 mana battle that does 4 damage, if you remember that one, I always was like, man, this is a pretty good rate. Well, I mean, it wasn't because it didn't see play, but 2 mana for that effect as just one option is wild. And permanents you control gain indestructible. I mean, this is permanence. You can do this, blow out their combat. And also, they play Get Lost on your enchantment. And my God, this is going to be a little bit annoying.
Oh, it absolutely is. And it's an interesting card because if you think about it, to your point, to get some of these abilities, we've actually scaled back their rate a little bit, right? Of just, all right, this is a little too much, or we get these types of abilities on like a sorcery. So you have to commit to the double strike or the damage, on your turn. The fact that you get your option of these 3 things for 2 mana at instant speed, super good. Super good. Like nothing to hate about this card. Like I literally was going through the list and I saw this and I was like, wait, we get to play a Boros Charm? Like, hold on a second. Like, how's nobody talking about this? Like, this is crazy.
Great pick. The only thing to hate is if you don't play Boros very much. And honestly, I swore off Boros during Boros Convoke,
oh, sure.
So during that whole period last season, I was just like, I'm never playing Boros again. It just felt a little too good in best of 1. But I mean, I'm going to have to start playing it again with this card out there.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about in this set. But to that end, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you in your channel since we're wrapping this up and they have another video they can go watch?
Absolutely. Check out Mythic Mike on YouTube. It is at Mythic Michael because Mythic Mike was taken. But if you search for Mythic Mike, you'll find me. I think we'll put a link in the description and really appreciate the collab, man. Been a great time. We're going to get into some other sick cards on the other channel as well.
Yeah, so be sure head over there and check that out. And if you want more foundation stuff, if you're watching this now, there's like 80 things on my channel right now. You should go watch that too. But as always, wherever you're watching, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Take care of yourselves and family. Remember to be awesome. Be awesome to each other. We'll catch you in the next one.